Hi, this is Steve Cochran, and welcome to Live from My Office. This is the week where 1 year ago, the United States Capitol was stormed in what amounted to the worst attack on one of the great symbols of democracy in the world, and our U.S. Capitol, the worst attack since the War of 1812 when the Brits tried to burn it to the ground. It was outrageous. It was insane. And it was another one of those moments where I think most right-thinking people thought, this is the time. We're finally going to come together on this. We're going to call this out for what it is. Nope. Not even close. You know, for years on the radio, anytime I would say something that was remotely positive about a Democrat, I was a left-wing lunatic or a weasel. Anytime I would say something, and literally it could be 5 minutes later, that was positive about a Republican, I was a right-wing nutjob. Because we live in a time, more so than ever, where people hear, see, read what they want, and that's when they stop listening. You can't live in those silos. You can't. And it's exhausting to have the same arguments over and over again. Look, we know this. COVID vaccines work, and they keep you alive. The vast majority of people who are in the hospitals, filling up the hospitals right now, are the unvaccinated. And the people that are bitching the loudest about how long it's taking to get through COVID and complaining about all of it are the people who are making it worse because they're unvaccinated, and they're allowing strains like Omicron to grow and new variants to develop. I'm not making this up. These are facts. So it would be kind to say that everybody's entitled to their own opinion and every opinion matters. Not here, and not on January 6th. Cops died. Protesters died. The video doesn't lie. Truth and facts aren't gray. Truth is always true. Facts are always factual. Trump started the riots. He created the environment. He fostered his lies. And he said, I'll march over the end of the Capitol. And instead, like the coward he's always been, he went and hid in the White House. And even when his own family, his own kids, and the people closest to him were begging him to make a statement, it took him hours. And more people got hurt. And some of the people that died could have been during that time. This election wasn't stolen. It didn't happen. Biden won, period. You don't have to like him. You don't have to like it. So be better than he is. Win the next election. That's the way this works. This isn't golf. Nobody loves golf more than me, but here's what I know. In elections, high score wins. Low score doesn't get to go do-over. It's an embarrassment that people continue to push this forward. And I come across this a lot. Whenever I slam Trump, and I stand by everything I've ever said about the guy, I get accused of being anti-Trump and Trump delusional and hated. And people who pull their punches more than I do, people who have been lifelong Republicans, get accused of being rhinos. Let me tell you the real rhinos are. And for those of you who don't know, rhino is a political term that's Republican in name only. If you support Trump, you're the rhino. Trump was never a Republican until it was convenient. It's an absolute fact, and it's the truth. And those are the two things that never change. And the most embarrassing of all, look, there was a moment of silence in Congress on January 6th. A moment of silence, a moment of silent thought or prayer. 2 Republicans showed up. 2. Almost half the House is Republican. 2 showed up. Only one's a member. Liz Cheney and her father, the former Vice President, Dick Cheney. Those were the 2 that were there. The excuses that your congressman will tell you is, well, they were doing the work back in the district. No, they weren't. They're cowards. They're cowards. They were hiding from the day because the majority of them know how wrong they are. There are a few lunatics who self-identify constantly, whether it's on social media or their desperate attempt to try to get on the news. We know who the loudest and the stupidest are, but the vast majority of Republicans in Congress will tell people in private, off the record, of course I know it's all wrong, but this is how I keep my job. Where are the real Republicans? You know, I lean right on a lot of things my entire life. Fiscal responsibility. I believe in that. Nobody blew up our economy more than Donald Trump. Yeah, there was a lot of good economic news during Trump's time. We also ran up the largest debt ever, and he made the richest of the rich better tax deals. It's not a lie. It's the truth, and it's a fact. The bottom line is this. We need to hold our elected reps to a higher standard than ever before. Or maybe we could start with hold them to any standard. The primaries are coming up in your state. Now, the laws vary around the country. But in those primaries, you'll have an opportunity, Republican, Democrat, or if you have a state where open primaries exist, to vote these people out. Who are these people? Again, 2 Republicans showed up for a moment of prayer. Liz Cheney and her father, not a member of the House. Everybody else owes you, they owe you an explanation. Why couldn't you be bothered to be there? Do your research. It will take a very little bit of time on great organized websites like ballotpedia.org, which I've hyped for years. I have no stake in them. I have no stake in the game. I just believe in what they do. And you got to show up and vote. Primary numbers for people showing up and voting are horrible. And Democrats are way worse than Republicans. You know the far right's going to show up. The far left, maybe. But you have an opportunity now to vote the people out that you don't want in, as opposed to showing up on Election Day and go, how'd we end up with these idiots? Well, it's because you couldn't get off your ass one more time and go out and exercise the incredible privilege of being an American and voting. Make your plans. Vote in your primary. Ballotpedia.org has very easy search tools where you can find out when your state primaries are coming up. Today on this, live from my office, an eyewitness to the carnage of January 6th. Congressman Mike Quigley was there. He was in the balcony area of the House, for lack of a better way of describing it. And when all hell broke loose, he was looking around for something he could use as a weapon. Down below him in the well, people were breaking up furniture, so they'd have some sort of legs from chairs to use as clubs. You know, the famous picture of guns being drawn at the door. All that's real. None of that's made up. They were looking for protection against tourists. They were looking for protections against an unbelievable mob that wanted to hang Mike Pence and kill Nancy Pelosi. Is that the country you want to live in? Congressman Quigley talks about that day, his thoughts then, his thoughts now. I even asked him about Mark Meadows. Meadows was Trump's late-term chief of staff and a longtime member of the House, and therefore a colleague of Quigley. And I thought Quigley might be politically correct about him, but he told the truth, as Quigley does. He said, no, he wasn't surprised about Meadows then. He's not surprised about how he's acting now. It's just stunning to me that congressmen and some congresswomen can go home and look their family in the eye and say they're doing the right thing. And the threats continue. The threats continue in just incredible volume that put pressure on our first responders and our security. And by the way, that's another thing Republicans always promised. Support the police. January 6th was a day where you watched alleged Republicans beat police, including beating one to his death. Quigley coming up. All of this sponsored, as always, by Team Hochberg and David Hochberg at 855-56-DAVID or 56david.com. Thank you, David Hochberg, title sponsor of Live from My Office, and hear him Saturday mornings on WGN on a show that will give you everything you need to know about doing the best money-wise with your biggest investment, your home. There was a quote that President Biden gave in his speech on January 6th that is a nice way to wrap this open up. And I just want to read it for you now. You can't love your country only when you win. You can't obey the law only when it's convenient. You can't be patriotic when you embrace and enable lies. President Biden on what we saw, what we witnessed, what's factual and true, what was horrible on January 6th. Everyone responsible, all the way to President Trump, needs to be held accountable and thrown in jail if that's what justice finds. And I certainly hope the Justice Department runs the course of this, because that's what America wants. We'll take a break. We'll come back. Congressman Quigley joins me next. Thank you for being here and listening to Live from My Office. If you're looking to purchase a new home or refinance your existing home, you need to do what I did. I called Team Hochberg, your trusted local lender who's always going to look out for your financial best interest. Your credit score is the number one factor that determines your interest rate. The difference between a 699 and a 740 score on a $250,000 mortgage will cost you an additional $25,000 in mortgage payments over that 30-year fixed loan. You heard me. An additional $25,000 that you'll never see. It's just gone in payments over the life of your mortgage unless you get that credit rating up. And to enhance your credit and to secure a lower rate, pay off or pay down your credit cards every Friday and get added as an authorized user on the credit card of someone with great credit. These are the tips and tricks that Hochberg knows. They're all legal. And this is the kind of time he can save you because he's doing the thinking for you. Team Hochberg helped me and my family and thousands of my podcast listeners enhance their credit to secure the lowest rate before purchasing a new home or refinancing their existing home. But they can't help if they don't have you on the other end of the phone. Pick up the phone and call or jump online. It's 855-56-DAVID or 56david.com. Your part's easy. They'll do the heavy lifting. 855-563-2843 or 56david.com for Homeside Financial, an equal housing lender. NMLS number 1124061. Well, it seems weird to use the word anniversary because when I think anniversary, I think happy. And certainly January 6th was not a happy time. One of the last people to be evacuated from the Capitol, who many of you may have heard live that day on Channel 9 here in Chicago, is Congressman Mike Quigley. How are you?
I'm good. Good to be back with you.
Yeah, and Happy New Year. It's got to be weird for you. I mean, does it seem like a year?
No, this one went by really quick. Perhaps it's because of, being a little older, time just flies. But, I think this thing was such a dramatic stamp on an imprint on our brains and our lives that it doesn't seem that long ago.
The disturbing thing to me, there's a million of them, obviously, but the unconscionable nature of having your life saved by the bravery of the Capitol Police and the other assisted police and military people that were served that day, and then for so many of the Republicans to stand up as soon as that night and vote to decertify the election and stand by the ridiculous lies of Donald Trump and not honor these people who saved their lives. I can't even wrap my head around it.
Yeah, there were actually a few that refused to vote to honor them. I'll say this. I know they saved my ass on January 6th.
Right.
And the staff and my colleagues, Democrat and Republican alike. But if you think about it, they probably saved the Republic.
Right.
Right? Because it just seems hard to say this and that seemed like hyperbole. But they were, 60 or 70 feet away from capturing, in succession in our country, number 2, number 3, and number 4. So that's the definition of a coup. From the night before to that morning, I heard what they were saying. They wanted to lynch the vice president. They wanted to shoot the Speaker of the House. They brought guns, stun guns, bear spray, restraints. And before all this blew up, they found pipe bombs. There were Molotov cocktails. So, they didn't come for tea. And over 100 police officers were injured on that day. 2 died shortly thereafter from what I believe was related trauma. So, what an extraordinary criminal act. And, if this took place in a store or a restaurant or a factory and the officers fought so bravely to defend me, they'd be honored, all right? But this was well beyond that.
That's what you can't draw a straight line with. And I know we live in an era of no common sense, and the truth stops with whatever people believe, and they don't think anymore. but it doesn't have to be that way. And you can't be a Republican and say, honor the police, and we can't allow people to riot in our major cities, and we can't allow people to overturn stores and take things that aren't theirs. You can't say that and then act like nothing happened at the Capitol. I don't know how those two things don't connect for most people.
One of the more striking moments of the day, to your point, is, the night before I rode my bike around, walked around, right, and I could hear what, wasn't hard to find these folks or identify them, not just because what they were wearing, but what they were saying, threatening the vice president, speaker. The morning of it was worse. But about a half an hour before we went in the chambers, I looked out over the East Capitol steps. Now, this is the opposite direction of where the large force came from the president's speech. But about a half an hour before, there was a huge mob out there, and they were chanting the threats. And there were 3 Capitol Police on the plaza in ball caps, and absolutely nothing between them. So, insurmountable, just extraordinary, overwhelming odds against them, that they stood there. So people have to recognize that for what took place, deal with the truth for a change, and address the root causes of what took place there.
This being a year down the road, you and I have known each other for a long time, and you may not agree with me, but I know this to be true. You're a tough guy. You're a tough Chicago guy. On that day, when were you at a point where you thought, okay, I'm scared?
I don't know how tough any of us are, but I'll say I don't want to say I'm any more courageous than anyone else. And I've had people diagnose this and say, well, if it's fight or flight and you don't have the option of flight, then the only thing that comes to mind is fighting.
Yep.
We were the last to be evacuated because when we got to the floor and the first objection took place, only a few people were going to speak on the first state. I was going to speak later, so with others, I went up in the gallery. Now, they evacuated the floor because they could, but, it just happened to be the circumstances that the gallery was surrounded and we were the last to evacuate. We were trapped. So I wasn't thinking, what's the coolest way to act this?
No, of course not.
You just react. And the reaction was, I was looking to make a weapon. And I was thinking, I wish I was still I know this sounds crazy, right? A member of Congress, the most important democracy in the world. I was looking down on the floor and I go, wow, look, there's a bunch of tables and chairs.
Yep.
And some of my colleagues had already broken up stuff so they could have a club. Up in the gallery, it's all steel theater type seating.
Yep.
Banked pretty high. And so I was like, I don't know what to make out of weapon. You heard them pounding on the doors, and, with that many people, you thought it was only a matter of time. So as crazy as it sounded, looking to make a weapon, if they're coming at us, and we heard the explosions of tear gas, we could hear the crashing. You could tell this was a violent demonstration. To my left, when I was on WGN Live, you can hear on that audio a gunshot where the woman was killed breaching the door. So I was like, okay, how do I do this? If they come running down these steps, do we try to throw them over the balcony? And I know how absurd that all sounds.
No, but you're it's what you said. You're reacting in real time in the moment. And what can I do to defend me and this position and the people that are less able to fight when they get in there? Because you weren't assuming if, you were assuming when.
Sure, and there was conflicting orders from the people who were our security on the floor. Now, we didn't even know which was which, who was who. The fact of the matter is there were people who were sergeant at arms, but they were plainclothes. There were Capitol Police in plainclothes. Because the vice president's there, we assumed there'd be some Secret Service, and they were giving us orders, stay down or move over here, or, who's telling us what? We didn't know what to expect. So amid that chaos, you're sort of thinking you're on your own. And, there were members who weren't able to open up the gas mask, right? At some point in time, when Leader McCarthy was whisked off the floor, Speaker Pelosi was whisked off the floor, we continued for some bizarre reason the debate for a while. And then, finally they stopped, exited the ground floor, and then you're on your own. And at some point in time, it's, okay, this tells me this has an evolution. Members were calling, I give my colleagues credit. The ones I heard were calling their families, trying to calm them down. Now, I don't recall members until we got evacuated and we were in our location waiting to come back, showing video on their phones. So, maybe people didn't recognize the full extent of what was being shown on TV at the time. But, there were folks who I think thought that they were going to die.
You and I both know that the good of the Republican Party, while it is hard to find, is an important part of this democracy, and a real Republican Party that deals with the truth and a sense of honor, and is not the Trump Republican Party, is the only hope for the Republican Party moving forward, and frankly, the only hope for the country. But because of this time we live in, where there's limited people willing to step up and show honor and tell the truth, and to just blatant lies to keep their job and keep their power that's going on, where would you rank our level of threat to this democracy right now? We're a year later. The investigation continues. The Attorney General spoke and said, we'll go as fast as we need to go, but everyone will be held accountable. Should we be waiting for the other shoe to drop?
I don't know that I expect another full-fledged assault like this, because I don't know if the occasion will present itself to have 25, 30,000 people, just shortly after the election. I'd be concerned about 24, but between now and the next election, we've been told that the threats on the Capitol on members have quadrupled, as high as they've ever been. 10,000 recently. It's pretty dramatic numbers that we're hearing. We're getting briefed on buying body armor and the like. If you're talking about threats on Congress, I suspect what most people are concerned about, most members are, sort of the lone wolf individual attack. Fact is, they know where we live.
Sure.
We go to 4 or 5 public events a day. There's sort of a sense that, look, if they really want you, they're going to be able to get you. But you have to function. When we were, again, waiting to come back to, as the vice president said, finish the job, and that was the mantra as we waited. We're going to not let the bad guys win. I think there was that feeling that how do they possibly clear out the whole Capitol? Is it safe? But we were going to go back. At this point, I feel the same way. You can't let the bad guys win. I think I recognize that. It's tougher for our families, too.
Sure.
So right now, that's an ever-present threat. The fact that that mindset is out there, that the big lie works, and that, stop the steal, and with the underlying understanding that means it's okay to be violent, that's the threat. It's a fragile democracy. There's a dangerous trend toward authoritarianism that has even reflected itself in polling now, right? I mean, there's a authoritarian government in Europe now, and just before that took hold, the polling was about 29 to 30% in that country that said that democracy isn't always the best form of government, and you may have to be authoritarian. Well, that's about where we are in this country, with some extraordinary polling toward that end. That's the underlying fear, and that's the issue we have to address.
The president had a former member of the House, a colleague of yours, become his speaker late in his term, who is absolutely dead center in the middle of this investigation to January 6th. So talking about the congressman from North Carolina. Why am I spacing on his name?
Mr. Meadows.
Yeah, Mr. Meadows. Are you surprised at the Mark Meadows you knew acting the way he is now?
No. Look, he didn't change at all.
Okay.
And look, he was in Helsinki with the Aspen Institute, talking about Russia and its threats, with his family. I was there, same. There was a group of us, including Senator Durbin and the former Russian ambassador. So, we had dinner together, and all pleasantries, but all the time recognizing just what he represented and how he thought. And when the impeachment investigations took place, I knew where he was going to be. And he was a perfect pick for President Trump, because he's the leader of the amnesia game. Remember, McConnell and McCarthy, in the day or so after January 6th, they both said that the primary responsibility lies with President Trump. They've forgotten all that.
It's on video, kids. You could you do a very simple Google search, and you'll see it anytime you want.
Well, now the wave of text that reflect that from Trump-based media,
right,
and his family, friends, members of the House all thought and recognized how severe this was, how important this was, and encouraging him to do something about it. And of course, that's all forgotten because what we're seeing here is what one of the two Republican members of the Select Committee said when she said, you can be loyal to the Constitution or loyal to President Trump, but you can't be both.
And the truth of the matter is, as we go forward here, it does take time and it does grind. Now, you were a prosecutor for a long time. Are you happy with the pace of the investigation?
Well, I was on the other side for 10 years as a
I'm sorry, you're a defense attorney. You're right. So that is a different viewpoint, but you've seen both sides.
I've seen both sides, and I would say this, that you can be encouraged at the number of arrests, 700 prosecutions. I'm discouraged that the ringleaders aren't involved yet, that people who assaulted police officers are getting a couple years in jail. That's a big concern. So I want like most of my colleagues, like to see the pace picked up. Those treated more severely who did more than just walk into a Capitol uninvited, right? This was part of a coup. So particularly the ringleaders and those who physically assaulted district police, Capitol police, and so forth. At this point, the old expression, throw the book at them, is only fair to, some of them show some degree of remorse because sentencing is coming. But I get the sense that many of them are going to be playing this up and playing the martyr, the political prisoner, as they're being called by some of my colleagues.
The extreme right, you can't fix. And any sense of common sense or sensibility, you can't fix. You can't make Marjorie Taylor Greene smarter. Can't make the woman from Colorado equipped enough to do her job. You just can't. But the disturbing part to me is how many of your colleagues on the right have told you they agree that Trump's a menace, Trump's a huge problem, but they're not willing to say it. So it always goes to the same question for me. Look, I know it's a good job, or at least it was. $165,000. You get a good table at a steakhouse in Georgetown. You, I know, as a person I've known for a long time, you actually want to help people. Everybody in Congress isn't of that mindset anymore. But how, in God's name, could the job that you have be so good that so many people would sell out on the other side?
For them, it's if you don't, if you're not embracing Trumpism, you're not there. So I think they rationalized, well, I can do good, and I just have to embrace Trumpism, and then I can do all these other things. On the other side, there are members on the Democratic caucus who question, can we work with anybody on the Republican side? Now, you're right, there's extremists you just can't. And you have to weigh that. But toward the end of the year, I was the author and sponsor of a bill on ALS, Act for ALS. Mm-hmm. It had the most co-sponsorships, bipartisan co-sponsorships of any bill in this Congress. And it is a game changer for those with ALS and all the other neurodegenerative diseases. And the only reason it passed is it has such overwhelming bipartisan support. So,
thank you and congratulations on that.
Yeah, but my point in bringing it up is you got to ask yourself, do you deal with the devil? And the answer in part is, until we sort this out and do the other things, there's value in doing this in the deed itself. It was an important piece of legislation. But it also reminds itself that measures like that and the infrastructure package, the worst thing we could do is nothing at all. We still have to function. And the fact that we are proving that it can be done despite these differences is at least some hope in this frozen tundra, this toxic tundra that we're living in now. So we all have to sort of struggle with that. Some of my colleagues have taken a different tact on it. And I guess the final thing I want to say in the broader context is, when were we closest to this point? And I would have to say it's the Civil War. Mm-hmm. What's different now than then? At least at one point, the leader of our country then, 650,000 Americans slaughtered on battlefields. Now, I don't know if the wounds ever healed, right? But the leader of our country at that time was using words of healing, quoting the scriptures to appeal to the better angels of our nature, right? He spoke of a new birth of freedom, the opening of the cemetery, and with malice toward none and with charity for all. We're not hearing those healing words as we did then. And that at least has to be the start as we appeal to that better nature.
The only way this country can thrive, survive, and work for everybody is if we go forward with the good that this country was built on, and the words that you said from Lincoln at the time, and the ideas that still exist. But it really is on carrying Republicans who believe in the principles of being a Republican to make sure that the fringe who want to literally overthrow the government and want to push forward Trumpism and Trump lies are not in office. And you got to show up. Now, in Illinois, we've got a primary system where Democrats vote the Democratic slate, Republicans vote the Republican slate. It's not like that around the country. And frankly, the whole primary system needs an overhaul. But you got to show up. You got to show up to make sure the people you want, you believe in, to entrust with making the laws of the land for you are going to do that, and not just let things happen and then wonder how we got there. What's the action plan you would say to people listening who want to know what they can do? What can they do?
Well, I'll say this to add further concern. The moderate Republicans I know say, watch out, because the moderate Republicans are being challenged by more extremes in the primary. So this could get worse. And leadership following that on the Republican side could make things much worse. I just think it takes voices. It takes activism. People need to be engaged. Some turn off when things get this bad. They have to plug in, Democrat or Republican, and just try to get behind folks with a good heart who care about these things. We have a whole checklist of issues we care about when we get engaged in politics and when we vote. And number one has to be, does this person believe in norms? And I think you understand what I'm saying when I say that in the reality of what we're seeing, norms, how we treat the system in each other, and some understandings of what the rules are more important than what the Constitution tells us and what the laws and the rules tell us. And I think people have to pay attention to that when they make those decisions.
I don't want to ask you to put on your crystal ball, or get your crystal ball out and put on the Karnak hat that Carson used to wear. But what's your thought on where we're going to be in 6 months?
I think you'll see further extraordinary releases from the Select Committee. By that time, you'll certainly have the preliminary report that's due out in the summer with its recommendations. And as important as any of those things is how do the courts rule, and how quickly will they allow the Select Committee to move to compel people to release documents, to testify, and to let us know. That will tell us if we have some accountability here. And you're right. I don't know that we'll ever get to the farthest extreme, and will they ever listen? But when we were debating the president's crime relating to Ukraine, and I was talking about this locally and on national media outlets, people said, well, this will never pass the Senate. And I said, well, I know under the Constitution that the Senate is the jury. But the fact of the matter is, with this matter, and matter you and I are talking about now, the jury is the American people.
Right.
So my goal is to talk to as many of them as possible and speak to reason and to norms and to why this matters.
Show up for your primaries. Honorable Republicans who don't believe in the extremism, vote those out that do. And I guarantee you the far right will show up to vote. You got to show up to make sure that the far right doesn't win. And my hope for the far left is that you find a way to get along and move the Biden agenda forward so we can get some trust back in this country. But in the meantime, I appreciate the work you're doing and your office is doing and your colleagues are doing to try to work towards getting meaningful legislation done for everybody. And I just wish you an early Happy New Year. I know we'll talk again soon, but stay safe.
You too. Hello to everybody. Thank you, and have a good New Year.
Are you purchasing a home and are you tired of getting your offers declined? You need to do what I did. I called Team Hochberg, a trusted local lender who will always look out for your financial best interests. Your offers are being rejected because they didn't stand out from the other 10 or 20 that are sitting there. That's why you need to call Team Hochberg to learn about their 21-day close. Make your next offer stand out by telling the seller, Team Hochberg is originating your loan, and your loan will be closed 21 days later. 21 days within the home inspection time and attorney review, that clock will be ticking. And the bottom line is this: a cash offer is the only offer that's stronger than a Team Hochberg 21-day close. Team Hochberg helped me and thousands of my podcast listeners purchase homes within 21 days of the home inspection and attorney review. My son and daughter-in-law just did this. If it's good enough for them, I'm recommending it to you. But they can't help if you don't call 855-56-DAVID or go to 56david.com for more information about how to make your next offer stand out with the Team Hochberg 21-day close. Call 855-56-DAVID or visit 56david.com. That's 855-563-2843 or 56david.com for Homeside Financial, an equal housing lender, NMLS number 1124061. On every episode of Live from My Office, I bring up a charitable group or organization that's tied to what we talked about, or it's one that you as listeners have recommended to me. You can always do that. Send me your ideas, or charities you support, or things you think I should know about, worthy of a plug. and we'll take a look at them. We just need to know their website more than anything else. Contact info for you is always helpful. But thank you in advance for doing that and for sending emails for any reason to me, including your long desire to be on the show as well. We're going to have some listeners appear on the show with us this year. More on that in the time to come. And we have more apt gift cards to give away. We'll be doing that very soon as well. So thank you for subscribing, rate, review, listen, follow, all of those great things. And if you know somebody who is a Steve Cochran fan and doesn't know where I ended up, tell them I'm not in the witness protection program. I'm doing a podcast, and encourage them to give their phone to the nearest 7-year-old who can download Live from My Office for them, subscribe, and they'll never miss an episode. Let's do this. The charity worth mentioning this time, I was looking for something that really sort of backed up what we need to do, and that is support police and first responders, the people who keep us alive. And an old show business pal of mine, a great actor, Gary Sinise, has the Gary Sinise Foundation, and they do great work for first responders. It's GarySiniseFoundation.org. As always, it's in the show notes and link there, but GarySiniseFoundation.org. You can specifically donate to the cause of first responders there, and I hope you will. The Deep Six episode, normally heard on Fridays, because we're taping this on a Friday, is still coming up. We got a Deep Six episode that we will post very soon, so be looking for that with my friend Patty Steele. And Patty and I, though being friends for, 25 years, maybe longer, we also share something that so many of you have also experienced, and that's loving somebody who has terrible addictions. In the case of Patty, her son Jake. In the case of me, my brother Mickey. If you listen through the years to me on the radio, I've talked about Mickey before. And coming soon, in the next few days, Patty and I will talk with Jake and Mickey about being addicted and about now being clean, about their life now and what they hope for others. And we also are going to talk about our own codependency. So I'll promote those on social media as well, but I hope you'll be listening. In the meantime, thank you, Ross Cochran, as always, for putting all this together. And thank you for listening to Live from My Office.
Thank you for listening to Live from My Office, a service of Monkey Run Productions. All rights reserved. The podcast is hosted by Steve Cochran, and it's mixed, edited, and produced by me, Ross Cochran. Support the show by subscribing wherever you're listening and by telling your friends about it. Follow Steve on all social media channels, including Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, and LinkedIn. And make sure you check out this episode's show notes for relevant information discussed during the conversations. You can also email the show directly at thecochranshow@gmail.com with any questions or comments. And that's the best place to tell us about your favorite nonprofit so we can make sure we mention them on the next episode. Steve is available for corporate speaking gigs. He would love to MC your event. And occasionally, he's funny. Thank you for listening. Head to cochranshow.com for more.